that we are kind of this first level support in a way to the underlying parachains. We are inviting 100 websites to be hosted for 100 years. Shorten the learning curve for them by introducing Apillon. Oh, fuck, sorry. We've upgraded the SDK, but we haven't updated the wiki.
Hello and welcome to Parachain. My name is Claudio and joining me today is Matjaz from Apillon, who's here to talk about Apillon. They're basically building on Polkadot, but we'll learn more about it in today's video. So Matjaz, thank you very much for taking the time to join. First of all, I always want to try to understand who the person I'm talking to is. So do you want to tell us, like, how did you get started into crypto and when?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I mean, great pleasure to be on your channel. So yeah, my name is Matjaz. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Apillon. And I've basically jumped into crypto back in 2015-16. So with the Ethereum ICO craze already. I was always into new innovative stuff. I mean, building in the old IT fashion, starting with fixing up PCs. And then I first saw the potential of virtualization back then. Started pitching the idea to my boss, let's do some virtualization to put more servers onto virtual servers on the physical servers to make more out of it. And this was back in 2008, 2009. Yeah. I was kind of pushed back. No, just leave it as it is because we're selling servers. This is our bread and butter. Then I switched jobs, went to a larger IT company, 2009, 2010. And this is when I heard this new thing called cloud. And I started exploring cloud business and I really fell in love and pitched it to my boss back then. And he also then, let this cloud be. This is not something that's going to happen. Now with 2023, you see where cloud is. Everybody's talking just cloud. And then fast forward to 2016, 17, when I already got a little bit into Ethereum and all the crypto stuff, blockchain stuff. I already switched jobs in between to another company. And this company had a large footprint of physical servers because this was their, they were doing data management, right? And this data management had like 40,000 nodes across the world. For me, this was a potential of, look, this could be a private blockchain. We could do some cool stuff for enterprise customers. But then you can imagine they all said, look, blockchain, it's just a farce. Nobody's going to use it. Just stay with what you're doing. And this for me was then this, let's say this kick in the butt that I needed. Let's do something on our own. Here we are building Apillon today.
So yeah, let's talk about Apillon. What is Apillon?
To give you how we became Apillon, what we did, why we did it, I have to go a little bit back. So when we started doing Apillon, it was before that it was called Authgrail, and we're doing data integrity as a service for enterprise customers. So we were building APIs for SAP, for Oracle, for Office 365, and basic enterprise applications to give an easy onboarding for enterprise customers into blockchain without them having to drastically change their daily operations, right? Just showcase what the potential is there. And when we started building that, we kind of got this feedback from those enterprise customers. Look, what you guys are building is a nice to have feature, not such a must have feature, because we have no regulatory push down to, we have to have data integrity, right? We have it already in place with the proprietary services, but there's no need for blockchain in there right now. So we went back to a drawing board, started exploring the potentials of blockchain technology, and we kind of fell down the rabbit hole. We started exploring the Polkadot ecosystem with Moonbeam, with Kilt, with Akala, with Fala, with Astar. And just to build a simple end user application, it took us months to just get to the fact, or just to the point that we can present something in the front end level, right? Yeah. So this is when we kind of started developing a tool for ourselves that it's going to be easier for us to integrate those parachains. And basically by accident, Apillon was developed because we saw, look, there has to be a tool that does the abstraction from this complexity of substrate chains and makes it easier for developer entering the space. And this is basically what Apillon is doing. So we take the parachains, we take their technology and to make an abstraction of it and translate it into a simple API so that you as a developer entering the space don't have to go through managing the wallets, the tokens, the nodes, the scripts, and everything on the parachain level. Yeah. We just translate into a simple service. So in Kilt, it's going to be identity service. On Astar and Moonbeam, it's a smart contract service. On Fala, it's a cloud computing service. Crust is storage service. And you as a developer, you never get in touch with the underlying parachains. We do all the heavy lifting and you can start building a decentralized app on Polkadot.
Wow, interesting. Okay. So you're like the escrow that's going to basically collaborate with the other teams. but not collaborate in a technical way, because you're ultimately sending messages, right, to those other parachains.
Like you said, I think this just the messaging, but also those relationships, right? If you're a new developer entering the space, you start building one of the parachains, that we are kind of this first level support in a way to the underlying parachains. So if something goes wrong, we can reach out to the underlying parachains and make it easier for them to kind of escalate issues. And we are in between kind of de-escalating the issue for the underlying parachains.
Okay, so now I need to ask you, like, what is your plan then? Is your plan to be a parachain, given that now Gavin Wood recently made an announcement that you need to purchase cores rather than try to win auctions, right? There's going to be no more slot auctions. So those cores are going to be like NFTs in a marketplace, and you're going to need to purchase those in order to launch your product. So is that your plan going forward? What are you going to do there?
So our initial idea was we wanted to go for a parachain slot with the old terminology, but it kind of transitioned to a much bigger, unique position that we are currently, because we wanted to be a parachain for the sake of having the cross-chain messaging integration with all the parachains, parity with the broader ecosystem. It made us clear that what we are building is a big missing piece in the Polkadot ecosystem. There needs to be a unified UX, UI to interconnect those parachains into real business logics. And so we're not going for a parachain slot. We're not going to be purchasing cores. We still leave it up to the parachains. What we are doing is we're becoming an open source common good and give basically developers this first, let's say, entry drug into Polkadot without having to go deep into the substrate chain, but they can have a look and feel what you can build basically on Polkadot without being exposed to Polkadot. And then we can take them slowly by the hand and then guide them through the ecosystem, show, okay, look, this is the team building this is the team building this, and this is the team building this. Now start exploring on the substrate-based level.
Okay, interesting. So that means you don't actually need a cryptocurrency because you are going to be a common good.
Yeah. So the fees that are going to be paid on the platform are going to be paid with DOT or with fiat. We have those two options because we are kind of presenting ourselves, or we are, as a SaaS platform, a software as a service. If you're a developer currently building in Web2 and want to get into Web3, you don't want to get in touch with any tokens or managing wallets, right? You have your JavaScript, you have your TypeScript, your Python, your C environment where you're familiar or home, and you can still stay in your environment, but just call our APIs. We will provide it and the Web3 infrastructure.
In order to become a common good, you obviously need to get some sort of funding as well, right? Before you start up your service and your platform and launch everything. So what is your plan to get funding?
So thanks for asking. So we are now in the process of launching or submitting our treasury proposal on Polkadot. We were hoping to do it last week already, but then luckily we had a lot of discussions with the communities, Chaos DAO, Polka House, Forum, Polka Assembly, and so on, because it's a rather huge ask. So to fund the operation for the next 3 years, we're asking for $1 million, which is a huge amount to ask. Yeah. However, I mean, the costs are justified, and basically we have very detailed cost structure. I mean, those numbers are not just grabbed out of thin air. I mean, we've been building Apillon for the past year. We know exactly what the costs are. And it's just a projection for the next 3 years that we can bring the product out of the beta to a really fully functional product and have at least 20 parachains integrated into the platform. So what we've basically done is we initially wanted to go for a treasury proposal, but we've now kind of switched it over from treasury to a bounty proposal, because we still believe that given this sheer size of the project, we want to give the community also a little bit of safety and buffer that they can trust us. So a bounty gives the community still the power to withdraw the bounty should they not be satisfied with the progress we are doing. Because there were some projects in the past who basically had a large treasury spent, but there was no accountability. There were no milestones set. There was nothing. So there was basically just a paper. We're going to do that, but they were never held accountable for doing that. So what we are doing is basically the $1 million that we are asking is split up into 4 payments. The first initial payment is a kind of safety payout, which guarantees us to build to the first milestone. And then basically each milestone that we achieve is going to be a child bounty that's going to pay the runway to the next milestone, right? And all those bounties are going to be basically curated by a team of technical experts from the ecosystem. So we're going to have 3 parachain teams. we're going to have parity, and we're going to have one seat from the ecosystem. So someone who's technically knowledgeable, knows what Apillon is doing, and can oversee our technical roadmap. And then basically at the end say, yes, they've delivered to the milestone and eligible to get the payout.
Okay, and let's assume that should the proposal be rejected, the referendum, because it is a very large ask and there's a high possibility that the community will be voting nay. Obviously, it depends who's going to support you, right? You may get lucky and maybe enough large holders will support you, because it is an interesting proposition, to be fair. I really like what you guys are doing. So I need to ask you, like, if in the case that you do get that nay rejection, are you not able to create a token system and to get funding through VCs as an alternative route?
I mean, let's say it's a split. Let's say a split thinking. Look, if we are doing an open source and common good, there's no value of selling an open source product to a VC, right? So a VC wouldn't be getting nothing. If we do a token, then we're adding additional friction into the ecosystem, because we were thinking, okay, let's put a token on DOT, right? But what will the token do? The token will be for staking, for governance, for securing network, for incentives. I mean, all those 4 things are already you can do it with DOT, right? It would make sense if we would have stayed on, let's say, Ethereum, for example, like Uniswap, right? Uniswap had to introduce their own token because the underlying network didn't provide them any additional benefits other than proof of work back then, right? Now with proof of stake, obviously. But so Uniswap had to introduce a token to kind of get the community involved. With us, the token doesn't make sense building on DOT alone. Should we, however, get into a broader ecosystem, so out of Polkadot, and start introducing new ecosystems like Ethereum, Solana, Tezos, Arbitrum, whatsoever, then a token would make sense again, right? So then we can say, okay, there's one token to rule them all. This token is going to be used as a unified token for backend swapping to the underlying chains. But right now, we still believe, or not right now, but our, let's say, long-term vision is that Polkadot is the backbone of Web3. So we love this dedicated app chains or parachains, because you have teams who are very specialized in those verticals, right? I mean, we are not experts in identity. We are not experts in smart contracts. We are not experts in DeFi, right? But there are teams who are specialized in that, and we will talk to them and build a tool on top of it, right?
Yeah.
And start in a, let's say, I call them like a generic layer 1, right? Like Ethereum, where you have thousands of experts or thousands of teams. It's really difficult to kind of get this intimate relationship with those specific teams, right? Whereas on Polkadot, you can have that, and they have experts in specific verticals. So in that regards, I mean, we would really like to pursue and continue building this as an open source and common good thing. However, we can still, down the road, when we see, okay, this has grown to a mature product, and it couldn't be just us, could be anyone else, can take the open source part and start building a premium service like an open core on top of it, right? And this is basically then up to the community how it develops.
Yeah, it does sound quite challenging, because the only way you could have a coin there would be to create like a kind of a lockup system for developers, so that if they want to connect to all these different parachains and use your service, they would need to lock up a certain amount of your coins, maybe, I don't know, in a specific address, which would be like in a pallet or something, and to be controlled that way, so that you can generate some value for the coin holders, because ultimately when you have a coin, you have to think about the coin holders too. Like, how can you bring value to them aside from just transaction fees, governance, and staking, which we've seen, all the parachain teams do that. So you need to take it like one step further. How else, like, what utility can I really bring, for those coin holders? So it is a challenging one, to be fair, and I totally agree.
It really is. And us not being a parachain, right? We don't have to secure our own blocks, right? We are like this infrastructure dApp on top of the parachain, which makes it even more difficult to kind of define a utility for the token. But really, being in a DOT ecosystem, it's currently there's no need for an own token right now.
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, and let's talk about some of the challenges that you found when you were building Apillon.
I mean, for once, there's a huge amount of work to be done on each parachain to really understand each parachain. What also has to be done is having constant communication to the Parachain teams, because what happened with one Parachain team was that mid-development, while we were building the integration, they changed the SDK, but it didn't update the wiki.
Oh,
So to my point, what I said before, right? Luckily we have those relationships with them. So we went on Telegram, we went on Discord, said, look, guys, this and this happened. Why isn't this and this working? And he said, oh, fuck, sorry. We've upgraded the SDK, but we haven't updated the wiki. We're like, dude, I mean, we need those information, right? If you want us to build on top of you, right? So if you're a new developer who's not familiar with that, who doesn't know the team, they can just say, this isn't working. I mean, Polkadot isn't working. The whole chain, the whole ecosystem is working. And this can really, I mean, for one dev, it probably is not that bad. But if you're looking at the scale, what we are trying to achieve, it's much different. We've launched our platform as a beta in January this year. Up until today, we have already 800 developers on the platform, building on Apillon, hosting websites, uploading storage data to IPFS, minting NFTs. And it's all without ever touching any parachain at the back end, them, right? They just see a front-end interface and do that, but they never get in touch in the parachains. So we have to be really on a constant development, R&D, and upgrading phase to keep up with the parachains and then translating it to the front end, right? So this is actually one of the biggest challenges. The second biggest challenge, I would say, is right now, I think we are still in a position that the crowd loans are not happening that frequently. So we have the time to go and analyze what chain makes sense to integrate. Yeah. But once we get into open source and common good, the whole backlog that we have, because we have like 25 chains in the backlog, it's going to be governed by the community. So if the community says, look, we really want to see HydraDX being integrated, for example, or composable finance, or I don't know, I mean, all those different chains that are currently out there, right?
Yeah.
We want this very badly in there because we see a potential of building this and this and this, then this is going to be prioritized and built back. The milestone 1 that we've defined has been defined by us, and it's going to be integrated by the end of milestone 1. But then the milestone 2 and milestone 3 are going to be basically governed by the community. We're going to go out with a backlog. We're going to give suggestions based on our experience. This would make sense. But then the community is going to decide, go with this and this and this.
Yeah, and you're right about the, because one of my friends has developed a bot as well on Telegram, which was running the pilot to do transactions on the different parachain teams. And one of the issues that he found is in relation to the metadata updates all the time, which can be challenging, because if there's always some change, you need to make sure that those changes are also pushed on your side, right? Because otherwise you could have problems with the communication to those parachains. Yeah. So that's definitely one of the challenges, staying up to date. Basically, maybe having a group with all the developers from all the different parachain teams that you're working with. And as soon as there's a change, they should inform you there in that group. That's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like you need that kind of communication, with them, because you're just connected to so many that if there's one mistake somewhere, that can like really impact your product,
Definitely. I mean, that's why we are kind of standing in the middle, right? I mean, we want to have enterprise customers entering the space as well, right? And they will kind of require some SLAs, right? You have to, and we are dependent on the parachain. So our service is only as good as the parachains in the backend. If one parachain fails, like you said, then the whole app of this enterprise customer could fail, right?
Yeah.
And so we really have to have, and like you said, we have those. I mean, there's not like a large group, but we have one connection to the Parachain teams. But luckily, and I have to knock here, I mean, they're all very much respondent here. I mean, this is what I also really much appreciate about the Polkadot ecosystem. Those teams, I think we're all, let's say, rowing in the right direction, in the same direction. We all want Polkadot to succeed. And we are kind of seeing this, why we then built Apillon, is what Polkadot is doing in the backend of interconnecting them. Apillon is doing of interconnecting them, or interoperability layer on the front end, right? Abstracting all the infrastructure stuff, abstracting all the tokens, all the wallets. Just give me the services that you need. And I think this is up until now being very appreciated by the community.
So let's talk about the marketing aspect. So how did you manage to market Apillon enough? Because you're saying that you have a lot of developers already there.
Yeah.
working on it. So how are you marketing Apillon? Like, what is your strategy to market it? Because you obviously need to bring developers, so you need to find ways to market to those developers. What is your
Yeah.
strategy?
So one would be here. I'm Web3 approved. So that's one initiative that we're running together with Crust. So
Oh, okay.
we are inviting 100 websites to be hosted for 100 years. So through Apillon, you can host your website, and it's going to be up for 100 years because we're pushing this unstoppable way of running applications. This is one initiative that we're running together with Crust. The others would be that we're kind of targeting events out of Web3 ecosystem. So we're not going at, I mean, we are obviously Polkadot Decoded and Sub-Zero and Web3 Summit and so on. But we are more like, let's target, let's say, ecosystems outside of Web3, like Web Summit. We are developers, hackathons, and so
Yeah.
on, which are very much targeted on, for example, learning Rust, right? They want to understand how Rust is working, and they can basically come into this, come in touch with Rust through Apillon. First, stay in your comfort zone, build in TypeScript, JavaScript, whatsoever, because you're familiar building there. But then we'll slowly start showing you the benefits of building on Rust, and then you can start building on Polkadot, right? Because it's. I mean, I come from the enterprise world, right? And sales cycles are enormously there. I mean, if you want to completely switch off or turn off, or let's say replace an incumbent product, it takes time because people are used to that flow internally, right? You come in and suddenly want to replace, I don't know, SAP with another ERP system, right? There's a lot of work involved to do that, right? And even though if the new product is 10 times cheaper and 10 times faster, it's going to take time to replace it and convince the customer that it makes sense for them to do that. And there's not going to be a lot of Web2 developers saying, oh, I have to build Web3. I'm going to ditch my knowledge that I have learned so far, and I'm going to start learning Solidity, and then I go into Rust, and so on and so on. It's going to take time, and we want to provide them this time, and want to shorten the learning curve for them by introducing Apillon. Yeah. So those are those are basically our marketing approaches, right? To go out there to events who are not Web3 native, but start slowly showcasing that you can build user-facing applications like Instagram, Netflix, Airbnb, whatsoever, but leveraging Web3 technology and give users the ownership, the identity, and everything in there.
And so when you're saying you're working with a lot of developers, are these developers working purely on Apillon, or are they also working on dApps that, or maybe Web2 applications that will connect to Apillon, which will then connect to these parachains?
I mean, we have no insights into what developers, I mean, we have the metrics on which services are being called, but I'm not sure if you're familiar with a tool called Firebase. Firebase is basically
Sounds familiar, yeah.
Yeah, so you have Firebase on Google Cloud, and you have Amplify on AWS. So
Okay.
Google and Amazon, they're both cloud providers. They give you storage nodes, they give you computing power, identity, and so on. But Firebase and Amplify, they're like this software development layer in between, because they take care of all the underlying infrastructure, so that you as a web or mobile app developer don't have to worry about it. You just want to use those services to run your app on top. That's what we are building. So you have this layer in between, and we take the Apple or the Polkadot infrastructure as our infrastructure, and then give you the tools to build. So what you're going to build on top of it, it's just up to you. I mean, you call our API and you can start building on top of it, but we have kind of no insights what's going to be built. Those let's say 800 developers that I've mentioned, those are, let's say, customers on Apillon currently building something. And I mean, the majority is basically hosting websites currently, because it's just a drag and drop. You can drop your website on there and it's hosted on IPFS. Our own website, apillon.io, is hosted on IPFS.
Yeah.
But the beauty is it's decentralized, it's unstoppable. There's no central server who's going to crash. Basically, your website lives in an unstoppable way.
Interesting. So the only way you can really find out what they're doing is if they get in touch with you, because there's some connectivity issue with the API, and they're going to be like,
yes,
hey,
in a way, but even then, we're just the API in between. The website will still live on IPFS. I mean, if Apillon falls down, and this is thanks for asking for mentioning it. We are not owners of the, let's say, of the underlying projects, right? If there's a developer starting building smart contracts or deploying on IPFS, we keep the ownership, but there's possibility of transferring the ownership. So if they say, look, I'm not confident enough on managing my own infrastructure, We take the bucket. So here you can now build directly on chain, right?
Yeah.
So we have this transferability of ownership as well.
Is there anything like exciting that you want to share with regards to Apillon? Anything that you will build that, you know, would really, I don't know, bring attention to maybe developers watching this video? Anything that you want to share that's really exciting? Anything that sets you apart from the competition?
Well, I think definitely the us moving to open source and common good. I think this is for sure one of the big milestones in Apillon currently, because obviously we had a, let's say, closed source business plan ahead, but then it opening up and foster new adoption to really drive the adoption of Polkadot ecosystem. And we're going to continue building that because we really see, like I mentioned before, we believe Polkadot is the backbone of Web3, and with Kevin Wood, with the new core time purchasing. I mean, I see there's as like I mentioned, being a big innovation, right? There was physical servers that you kind of had for specific applications, the Parachains, and now we have the physical servers with a lot of cores, and then the virtual servers on top of it, and basically buy the on demand. And I think with Apillon being this UI layer on top, it would make this thing even more interesting, because I think I see the Parachains are hyped, the Polkadot ecosystem is hyped, and we are hyped as well, because it makes it, I think it's in the move in the right direction. So both Polkadot 2.0 and us being an open source part on top of it, I think the combination could be a very killer one to drive new developers into the ecosystem.
And when can we expect the bounty to launch then?
It's going to go live on Tuesday, on the 18th of July. Once we see after a week or two, we're then also going to propose or publish the our suggestions for the curators. So like I said, 3 Parachains, 1 Parity, and 1 from the community. And this is also then going to the vote, because we also obviously want the community to say, okay, those are the guys or the gals who are technically mature enough to kind of have oversight and basically pass us. Then we should be live with mid-August.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing that information. And yeah, if you hold out and you want to support Apillon, just make sure to check it out on Tuesday and vote and support, you know, and just write a comment maybe, because feedback is always welcome, you know, like what I'm seeing with a lot of OpenGov proposals is we're not seeing enough feedback, unfortunately, you know, and I think it's also related to the fact that there are just so many proposals being flooded in and people just don't have time. Like I was recently doing an OpenGov video, and I spent a lot of time to go through all of those proposals just to summarize them, you know, without even looking through every single detail of the proposal, because that would be absolutely insane. So I can totally understand the frustration there. So it's good that we had this conversation. You know, hopefully people got a better idea of as a summary of what you're trying to do, how you're trying to help the ecosystem. So yeah, absolutely amazing. Now, I do have one final question before we end this, and that is, what is one thing in life that you truly desire?
What I desire, it's having this, let's say, this flexibility of having time to spend time with my family and the job that I'm really loving. So it's really the time, let's say, the time structure that I'm having on a daily basis. I have 3 kids. I have to kind of juggle between the job and the family, but having the possibility of being flexible enough to get everything done in 24 hours, I think this is what I really desire.
Wow, nice. Congratulations. Yeah, 3 kids, it's tough. And also developers also. Yeah, it can get tough. It can get tough. Cool. Thank you very much for sharing this information. And again, if you want to check out Apillon, you can find the link in the description of this video and also in the pinned comment. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.